I'll do a little introduction about me. So my name is Nicolle. I'm the owner of ConVino board. I started this business back when COVID first begun, just selling wooden charcuterie boards. Everyone was home though, so that kind of led into why not teach some virtual charcuterie classes on how to actually prepare a spread. And now to date, I've taught over 300 virtual charcuterie classes. You guys are going to get a ton of tips and tricks on how to cut each item, how to display it fancy on the board that you can kind of take on to any of your hostessing events coming up. It's really like a lifelong skill. And then that is accompanied by Geena, who's going to be leading a wine tasting. So I'm going to kick it off to her to start that off.
Yes, hi, I'm so excited to be here again. Thank you so much, Brophy Wealth Management, for having us back this year. So excited to be here. For those of you who haven't joined or didn't join us last year, I'd love to introduce myself. My name is Geena Bouche. I started Winecult with my husband just as a small side hustle almost 6 years ago. We started out as a boutique wine club and concierge service that delivers wine directly to our club members. But similar to Nicolle, during COVID, we pivoted over to these virtual events, and it has just exploded ever since. It's been so much fun working with Nicolle specifically. I actually just recently counted, and her and I have shipped out these packages to over 300 people over the last 3 years. So I'm just really excited about that. Aside from these boxes, I do focus specifically on sustainably farmed wines within my wine club and shop. So all the wines that you guys have are sustainably farmed, sustainably made, and come from small mom and pop winemakers that focus on really small micro productions. So you'll probably won't be finding these wines in your local grocery store. I really like to curate just wines that are special in their own right. Maybe they're a different variety than you're used to drinking, or a unique blend. So I just really like to showcase wines to people who might be interested in exploring their palate a little bit. So if you all would love, for those of you who have the red wine, we can start talking about that. So this is the 2020 Pivot Cabernet Sauvignon. I love this. Most people are familiar with Cab Sauv. However, if you're drinking an American Cab, you're probably used to thinking about Napa, maybe some stuff coming from Santa Barbara County, but you're probably not used to thinking about Cab from Lodi. Lodi is a very popular wine region, but it's mostly known for its Zinfandel production because it's really warm. So I decided to ship everyone this Pivot Cab, not only because it's fantastic, it has been a fan favorite for many of my club members and many of the events that I've done recently, but because it really allows you to step outside of the box of Cab and where it's supposed to be grown. I think it's important to explore different regions. So Lodi is in California, and like I said, it has a really warm climate. So with that warm climate, you get a really nice full expression of the fruit itself. So this is going to pair really nicely with that manchego. Once that manchego cheese, the triangle wedge one, lands on your board, it's also going to pair really fantastic with the salami. And this is a side label. A lot of the times winemakers focus on their main label, but then if they maybe want to explore a different focus or want to start branching out, they'll create these side labels, and Pivot is one of them. Made by Baron Ziegler, who is the winemaker for Banshee. I don't know if anyone has heard of Banshee. That is a much more popular, it's very well established, really fantastic wines. He focuses on a lot of Pinot Noir and Chardonnay in that label. And so he really wanted to step outside of his Pinot and Chardonnay branch and try a Cab. And that's where this Pivot label was born. He is using whole berry primary fermentation and spontaneous malolactic fermentation in the tank, followed by aging in oak barrels, and that lasts for about 14 months. So obviously we're here in 2023, and it's had a nice long time to age, both in barrel, but also in the bottle. And so you're really going to enjoy this with the rest of your goodies that are on the charcuterie board. All right, I'm going to hand it over to Nicolle. Oh, I'd also like to say, if anyone has any questions, we do monitor the chat, and I would be more than happy to answer questions. We can pause. We have been allocated just a little bit of time, but we do always save room for questions at the end, and we'd love to hear from you. All right, Nicolle, take it away.
Awesome, everybody. Yes, if you have any cheese, wine questions, pop them in the chat. I'm going to flip myself around because you actually want to see the cheese, not me. So I'm hoping that you kind of have like a similar setup in front of you. You want to have a cutting board and a charcuterie board. I like to have two separate spaces, one to cut, one to place. Just makes it a little bit more organized. Also gets kind of clustered if you're doing it all on one spot. Then you're going to need a knife. So I have a pretty sharp knife here. This is actually a hard cheese knife. You don't need as fancy of a cheese knife as me. You can just use a regular household knife, but sharp is key. So our cheeses, let's dive into the Manchego cheese first, since Geena just spoke about that one. So the Manchego cheese is going to be the cheese that is triangular. It's wedge shape, right? Now, if you haven't tried this cheese before, you are in for a treat. It's one of those cheeses that is honestly at every single grocery store, but it's often overlooked. People just walk right by it and go for their regular cheddar. So I'm hoping that I can introduce some of you to a new cheese today, because this is one of my favorites. The sheep's milk cheese comes from Spain. It's going to be buttery and salty and pair really well with everything, like salty, sweet, savory, spicy. It's just a well-rounded cheese. Taking a look at this cheese, you're going to notice it has a rind on it. Sometimes the rind is brown, sometimes it's red, sometimes it's pink. That is already like a signifier that this rind is not natural to the cheese. It's actually wax. And we don't want to be eating wax, of course, or serving it. It might be food grade safe, but just not a fan to leave it on the board. This cheese name is Manchego. And I'll leave it up to, I think, Sarah or Geena to write that in the chat for you. But beautiful cheese, and it's at every grocery store. So we want to cut off this waxy rind. I will probably cut off those two like flat ends, right? But the rounded end, I'm going to leave that rind on, because if you were to cut that, like you'd waste a ton of cheese. That's horrible. So we're going to take our cheese, plop it down on our cutting board, take the knife, and you are just going to cut off one of those flat ends of the rind. Get rid of that. Like you will see, that is pure wax. It's not even a rind that you can save for your soups. You don't want that in there. It doesn't have any flavor. It's one that is unfortunately going to the garbage. So get rid of that. Now you're going to see that flat end of the cheese. Now we're going to start cutting, okay? Because if we don't use all of this today, then we have the other rindy side to protect it in the fridge. So any triangular cheese that you buy, you are going to simply cut it in triangles. Really easy to just kind of think of cheeses as shapes. So we're going to start from that end, and we're going to start chopping away here. So I'm going to cut, I'll show you how thick about to make it. I would say about like 1/4 of an inch thick is probably best, okay? Then you're just going to cut a bunch of those. I would say if you're having like charcuterie for one, okay, maybe just like 6 slices, depending how hungry you are. But I would say maybe try to cut like around 10 to 12 slices if you can, which might be your whole block. So cut a bunch of these, okay? And then you'll see there's like a little bit of rind on that end portion. That's usually the part like I leave on because it looks nice displayed on the board, but I'll usually just like nibble to the bottom and then throw that piece out, right? Again, it's food grade safe. Trust me, I've eaten it like a million times before I even knew that it was wax. I'm still alive, so you will be too. But it's once you know it's wax, you're like, oh, I don't really know if I can be serving that to my guests, right? So cut a bunch of these and try this cheese too. I always say like you got to taste test what you are cutting. It's important to know what you're putting on your board. That way you can kind of direct your guests and say, oh, like this one's really salty, or you'll really like this one. It's very creamy, or stay away from that one. It's kind of stinky. So it's nice to know what you are actually putting on your spread so that you can tell the people coming over what you enjoy or what they might enjoy. Cut a ton of these. If some are thicker than others, that's okay. If you cut like a really thin one, I always tell people like eat that one and then keep on going. It's a great thing about working with food. You can't mess up. So I'm going to cut my whole block here. I can probably get one more slice out of this. So you end up with a bunch of cheese slices. So once you have those and you've cut everything, now we're going to style our cheese. So we cut, then we style, which means make look fancy. So we're actually going to make this cheese into like 2 different styling techniques. Feel free to use both, use one, whatever you'd like. First way that you can style manchego is you would grab a slice and you would take your slice and you just put it in like a corner or an edge. You just put it down flat like that. Easy enough. Grab another slice and then you're going to put it just like halfway on the last, right? Kind of creating a little fan here, but the points are meeting, right? Grab another slice, do the same thing, put it about halfway on the last, but the points are meeting. Grab another one, and then grab another one. This is just a manchego fan. You can do this really with any sort of like flat cheese, right? Whether it's like Havarti and you're doing rectangular slices, it just makes it look a little bit more fancy and gives it a little bit more dimension. The other way that you can style this cheese, which is my personal favorite, is you would grab 2 slices and you would hold them like so. Okay, so I have my 2 slices, I'm holding them by the rind here. And then you're going to face those slices towards one another. And then you're going to stack these slices on top of one another, like that. Okay, then you're going to grab another slice, put it in the opposite direction of the last one, and you're going to stack it. And you're going to grab another slice, put it in the opposite direction of the last one, and stack it. And here you are creating a zipper sort of formation. Looks really fancy, but like how easy is that to create, right? If you need to put that down, you can too. But you just keep on adding slice by slice until we run out of manchego slices here. And I call that one the manchego zipper. And so that's what it ends up looking like. Quite beautiful, right? Some people say it looks like a bow tie. Love that too. So we have our manchego fan. I'm probably going to go ahead and spread out the cheeses rather than like clump them near each other. I'm going to go ahead and take my manchego zipper and maybe put it over here, right? Spread those 2 out. And then that's it for manchego. So feel free, you can style it one way, you can style it both ways, just depending on how much room you have on your board. But fun that you can kind of do different styling techniques, right? Now let's go into our next cheese, which is going to be our aged white cheddar. Now you're probably used to your typical orange cheddar that you buy from the grocery store, you know, put on grilled cheese. You always have that in your cheese drawer in the fridge, I know. But I wanted people to try something different, which is going to be an aged cheddar. You're going to find that an aged white cheddar is going to be a little bit more crummy because it is aged. The moisture is kind of sucked out of it. So it kind of has more of like a Parmesan flavor to it, but still you taste that cheddar. It's delicious, especially with wine and charcuterie, fatty meats. So we're going to take our brick of aged white cheddar and you're going to grab your knife again. Any sort of brick of cheese that you buy, you're going to cut into cubes. Really easy, okay? So I'm just going to cut like straight down. And then I'm just going to start cutting some cubes here. So mine is like this. I'm going to have to cut it in half. And I'm just simply going to cut some cheese cubes that are a bit about like yay big. Okay, you don't want them too big, cracker size. You want everything to be bite-sized, cracker size. You might be wondering, why am I cutting everything before serving it? This makes it much easier for your guests when they arrive to just like dive right in and start eating. I find that if you don't cut your cheeses beforehand, that people are kind of just standing around looking at the board, right? Because they want to talk, they want to enjoy their time together. So best thing, have everything cut so it's kind of just like a grab and go, right? Makes it much easier for people. So keep cutting here. Now up to you how much you want to cut. If you're serving quite a few people tonight, or you're hungry, maybe you can cut the whole brick. If you'd like to still save some for later, then you can just cut half, but it's really up to you. But all of mine are inside of cubes. If yours is crumbling a little bit, that's okay too. This is sometimes what aged cheddar does, right? And the more it crumbles, the longer you know that it's being aged for. But a really flavorful cheese, and try this one. Definitely try this one. It's a must. We'll cut one more here. Like this. right? And some more cubes like that. What kind of knife is best? Okay, that is a good question. So I have a bunch of cheese knives. This is a hard cheese knife, so this one works best on like an Asiago or Parmesan. I also have another knife. I don't have it on me, but I have a knife with like holes in it. That knife is really good for like soft cheeses. It's an actual cheese knife. My favorite brand of knives for like cheese knives is Wusthof. I don't know, Geena, if you can write that in the chat, but it's called Wusthof. WUSTHOF. You can get them on Amazon or their site, but they have the best cheese knives like you could ever imagine. But really just any serrated knife works. I've seen people try to do this with a butter knife. Not the best. You will find that your cheese is like crooked or it's coming out like rigid. It's best to use something that's serrated, or better yet, an actual cheese knife, which Wusthof creates. So after that, you're going to grab a pile of your cheese cubes here, okay? And you are just simply going to plop them down onto your board. There's nothing too fancy about it, okay? We're not like building bricks, okay? Doing it perfectly. You're just going to kind of put them down inside of a perfect, non-perfect pile like that. And it gives them a lot of dimension again, makes them look textured, and that's kind of the name of the game here, right? So that is it for our cheeses. I'm going to hand it over to Geena to talk about the other wine, and then we'll make the rest of this board.
Excellent. So for those of you who have the white wine, you might be familiar with this one. Last time we worked with you guys, we presented the 2019 Tatomer White Blend. This is a new vintage, which is why I put it back in. It's the same blend of white wine varieties, but it's brand new, it's delicious. I love it even more than the 2019 vintage, so I'm so excited to bring it back. So this Tatomer White Blend is made by winemaker Graham Tatomer. He is located in, he has a tasting room located in the Los Olivos area, about 45 minutes north of Santa Barbara, which is actually where I'm located. And Graham got his start in winemaking in Austria. So he brought over his Austrian wine knowledge back to California with him and decided that he really only wanted to showcase the Austrian winemaking techniques as well as grape varieties that grow in Austria, but, you know, of course, using California grapes. So he usually does focus on Pinot Noir, Riesling, not a sweet Riesling. I promise I won't bring anyone a sweet Riesling, as well as Gruner Veltliner. And that's exactly what this blend is. It's 80% Gruner Veltliner and 20% dry Riesling. And this is definitely not a safety wine. It's probably not something that most people would pick up off the shelves unless they are, you know, excited about exploring different varieties like I am. So that's exactly why I like to put this into these boxes, because it helps people push past their need for those safety wines like Chardonnay or Sauvignon Blanc, and really introduces just a really unique flavor profile. So one of the cool things about these two grape varieties, again, Gruner Veltliner and Riesling, is that when they're picked early, like this wine was, it showcases this really vibrant, high acidity, but it isn't jarring or overbearing. It's not like you're licking a lemon. It's more like you're enjoying like a lemonade that maybe has some flowers in it and some dried fruit. And it's just so fantastic to me, while still also being extremely approachable. If you do like Chardonnay or Sauvignon Blanc, this is probably not too far off. However, I'm sure you're noticing just some subtle differences from what you normally might be drinking. So again, Graham Tatomer is all into the sustainability. He sources his grapes from only organically and biodynamically farmed vineyards. This white wine comes from 5 different vineyards that are all up and down the Central Coast and in very cool coastal climate zones. So that's meaning closest to the ocean as possible, because that's where you're getting all that cold atmospheric elements. And that is perfect for these higher acidity, thin-skinned grapes, Gruner Veltliner and Riesling. So those vineyards are Kikon Ranch, John Sebastiano, Paragon, Oliver's, and La Estancia. And if you are ever in California, I don't have any Californians here today in this group, but if you're ever in California, I would absolutely recommend visiting his tasting room, as well as these vineyards as well. One of the things that I really like to offer to all of my guests in these virtual tastings is if you're ever in California and you would like an itinerary for your wine tasting journey, I am totally reachable. I will include both mine and Nicolle's Instagram and websites as well at the end. So if you ever have any wine related questions, please feel free to reach out and ask them after. So finally, just a little note on how this wine was made. It is whole cluster pressed, which basically means all of the whole berry itself is put into the vat and then pressed to extract the juice. Then it's fermented and aged in stainless steel with a tiny percentage of very larger than your normal wine barrel size puncheon, which is just a fancy name for a large barrel. And they are neutral barrels, so it's not like a brand new oak barrel, so you're not going to taste any oak. It's basically just there to help the wine kind of mellow out and also balance out that acidity as well as the sharpness that you can get from aging a wine in stainless steel tanks. And then finally, the wine is unfined and unfiltered. Those are very common in this kind of sustainably made natural wine realm, because the winemakers don't really want to mess with the wine. They really want to allow all those kind of tiny little particulates to continue to change with the wine as it's aging in your fridge or cellar. And this wine is going to go so wonderfully with the white cheddar that you all just cut up. My favorite thing to do is put a little slice of the cheddar along with the apple and maybe a little bit of drizzle of honey. That goes really well with this wine that you all have in front of you, or those who ordered the white wine. And yeah, there's also some other little nibblies, such as the dried apricot on your board as well. That's coming up next. And with that, I will hand it back over to Nicolle to finish up the board.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Geena. Okay, so let's dive into creating the rest of this board. We got the wine, we got the cheese, we need some accompaniments. So next up, I am going to put on my accompaniments, which are going to be the jams, something sweet. So if you want to grab your jar of like honey and jam, we're going to add those on. So you can either keep the jar, you can either keep the honey and jam inside of the jar, or you can remove it and put it in a smaller ramekin. People always ask me, what do you do with the honey? What do you do with the jam? So this is actually a really nice sweet component to add onto your cheese. So it's going to be a different sort of complex sweet flavor that you are adding to a really sharp and fatty cheese. So that's why you usually see things that are sweeter on a cheese and charcuterie board. So again, you can keep it in the jar, or you can put it in a small ramekin, whatever you'd like. And then we're going to lay these out on the board and put them next to our cheeses. So the honey, I love the honey with either of these cheeses, but you want to kind of put your accompaniments like next to a cheese so people know what to do with them. So I'm maybe going to take my honey and put it over here, like next to my manchego. We'll leave it there for now. You can always move things around as you go. And then I'm going to grab my raspberry jam here, and I'm going to put that near my aged cheddar like so. Okay, so we have 1 and 2 out like that. And again, it's just to like drizzle on top. So usually you do like cracker, cheese, and then like a dollop of jam or a drizzle of honey, or both if you want to go crazy, and have that as like a full bite. And you will notice that it changes the flavor of the cheese, which I think is delicious. I'm a sweet type of person. So now we have that. Let's add on our charcuterie, which for those that don't know, charcuterie means cured meat, okay, in French. So we're going to add on our salami. So if you want to grab that, take it out of the package. Now, what we want to do is we want to cut our salami into like medallion slices. So we want them to end up looking like this, okay? Now, you can kind of choose here if you want to make them thin, if you want to make them thick. It's really just based on preference. I would recommend grabbing like a sharp knife for this. So I like to use one that's ridged, but you're really just going to dive into starting from one end and cutting your slices. I would say mine are about in the middle of like thin and thick. And I would say maybe cut about 10 to like 15 slices. If you're working with a bigger charcuterie board, you're having more people over, like I would say cut the entire thing for sure. So just keep on chopping that away. It's okay if some slices are like thicker or thinner than others. That's totally fine. But why you usually see like some sort of deli meat next to cheese on a board is because the fattiness and the saltiness pairs really well with the super fatty and creamy cheese. So that's usually why people have cheese and charcuterie. So keep chopping that away. Right? And you should end up with a bunch of slices like so. Now, what we're going to do with that, bring out my charcuterie board. So a few different things. We could make like a salami river. The salami river would simply be making your salami pieces go like starting at one end. So putting one piece of salami down and then putting one a little bit on top of that one, and then putting another one a little bit on top of that one, and just keep on like creating a river like through your board all the way to the other end. Or you could also put like, grab like a few slices of your salami. So I have like 4 there. And maybe I'm going to put like 4 over here. Okay. Like that. And then I'm going to maybe grab a few more slices, maybe 4 more. And I'm going to put 4 over here by my honey. Okay. But just like spreading out the salami rather than having it inside of a river formation. And then maybe I'm going to take like a few other pieces and put them over here. And just kind of having a few spots that have salami on them. So you can choose. You can either do the river or you can just put down a few different groupings of salami, whichever works best for you. But there are definitely like different ways that you can put salami down on your board to just make it look creative. So I've made like a few different mini rivers here with my salami. I like to spread out my salami. That way, if somebody's on this side of the board, they have access to it. If somebody's on this side of the board, they can go ahead and grab it, right? That's why we spread items out. So we have our salami. Let's drop in our crackers because that's a bigger item we want to get down. So open up your cracker package, okay? Now, crackers always get eaten first. I know it's kind of crazy to think about. It's not the cheese, it is the crackers. Everybody wants a carb with whatever they're grabbing on that board. So I always try to put out more crackers than I think I might need. These crackers are really nice. Like what really, you could use any cracker, whatever you enjoy most from your store. But what you would do is you would grab your crackers, whether they're rectangular, whether they're circle, whether they're square, whatever your favorite cracker is. You would have them and you'd make like a cracker stack with them, like so. And then since we have a few items on the board, try to look for a spot where you can kind of like wedge the crackers in between. So like a really good spot is like in between your honey and your cheese here, right? They stand up perfectly. And then maybe look for another spot where you can wedge in some crackers. Like you could always do some crackers here, some crackers here. I would say add in at least 2 cracker stacks. It's definitely important to have more crackers than you think you might need. I'm telling you, I'm always running back to my kitchen to go grab more. What I've also done in the past is sometimes I have such like a variety of items that I want to put on my board that I won't even put the crackers on the board. I'll actually make a separate cracker board, cracker, breads, baguettes, things like that, and then just keep this to the food, right? If you're serving a lot of people over. So we have that. Now let's go in with our apple, which is going to be our really nice, like fresh palate cleanser to add onto our spread. Now I like to add like apple, you could do pear, you could do orange for like the summer months. Basically, fresh fruit goes really well with cheese and meat because it is a palate cleanser. So what that means is it's just a fresh bite to cleanse your palate in between really rich bites, right? So you have a really rich cheese, then you have a piece of apple, then you have another cheese. That's kind of the situation. There's obviously a core right in the middle. You kind of want to stay away from that. So I'm just going to go cut off to the side and I'm going to cut straight down like so. I'm going to flip my apple around. I'm going to do the exact same thing on the other side here. I'm simply just going to cut straight down into my apple away from the core. Okay. And then you're going to flip your apple over so you can see that skin facing up. And we're going to start cutting thin apple slices. I prefer mine to be on the thinner end. So how I do that, how I create the perfect slices is that I cut right in the middle of the apple. And then I just start cutting from the inside out these really nice thin slices of apple that are going to go great on your board. Right, so just keep chopping away here, both sides. Oops. And then you're going to do the exact same thing to your other side of your apple as well. After you create all of those slices, I'll keep them out so you guys can see. Again, it doesn't matter if you make them thick or thin, it's just preference. I just like mine to be on the thinner side, because sometimes I'll actually add them onto a cracker as well, like with the cheesy bite. So I have a few there. I'm going to do the exact same thing to the other half of my apple as well. Put those into some slices. Okay. Then once you have your slices of apple, what you're going to do is you're going to grab a few of those slices. So I'm going to take like 3 of them over here. And now I'm going to fan out these slices. So I have 3. I'm simply just going to spread them out. Okay. So that one end here is fanned out and one end is cinched together. Okay. So again, it was like this, and I just fan them out. And that is simply how you're going to style the apple down. So I just kind of grab this, and I'm just going to put a few apple fans over there. I'll grab another little stack of apples, fan them out a little bit. And then I'm going to try to look for a few different spots where I can put some apple slices. They're hanging off the edge of your board. That's okay too. I find it looks really nice like that. So I have 3 more apple slices over there. And just, again, look around your board for a few spots where you can include these. Right? And this is why I like to cut them pretty thin for this bread. So I might keep it like that for now. See if I can add on any more after. Again, that's the fresh little bite. Now, speaking of fruit, we're going to do some dried fruit, because although we have fresh fruit, dried fruit adds a little bit of sweetness, which is going to go great with the cheese too. So let's go in with our dried cranberries and our dried apricots. Dried apricots, really nice color. It's going to add onto the board, and just love these with the wine and with these cheeses. With the white cheddar is my favorite. So with dried apricots, you kind of just want to take like 3 or 4 of them and clump them together. We want to create like a cluster. So I have a few of them, and then I'm just going to kind of put a few down on my board. So maybe I'm going to put like 3 or 4 over here. Okay. Grab another little cluster of your apricots. So I have another 3 here, and I'm going to go ahead and put maybe 3 of them over here in like the middle of my board. Okay. The idea is to spread out the color, to spread out that item so that it's available to people all over your board. And I'm maybe kind of putting 3 more in over here. It's nice because this is like filling out spaces now, so they kind of just stay put once you put them down. Now, dried cranberries are really small, as well as like walnut. So I usually put these on at the very end. So dried cranberries, I'll just grab a handful and look for a spot on your board where you have like some space to kind of just like drop in some dried cranberries. The goal is to like create a full looking board, so everything is kind of situated around one another. So I'll just like drop in some dried cranberries over here, some over here. And even in the summertime, if you're like, oh, like, you know, I kind of want to switch my dried fruits up to fresh fruit. Okay, no problem. You could do like blueberries, blackberries, raspberries. Same thing. Just drop them in to fill in those spaces. And then some nuts. So walnuts are awesome. You could do walnuts in the future, pistachios, pecans, just something that's going to have a nice bite to it. That's going to add some saltiness, and nuts and cheese go wonderfully together. So this is a last minute add-on, right? You just put it at the end to fill in space. So look on your board, give it like a bird's eye view, and just drop in walnuts where you see fit. So I might put like a few here. I might do like a few over here. And just drop in a little bit at a time to fill in some of those spots. And then last but not least, your board looks beautiful, looks great like this, but I always love adding in a little pop of green. So that green stuff that you had inside of your box in your shipment, that's rosemary. So if you want to grab that out, rosemary is, first of all, it smells beautiful, but it goes really nice to garnish the board at the very end to make everything come together. So like this is the board without the green. Now I'll show you with the green. So I usually will grab my stem of rosemary. What I did is I just chopped it in half, cut it, broke it, right? And then I'm going to take my little 2 stems here of rosemary. I'm just going to tuck them in, like underneath my crackers here, to add a little pop of green. And then I'm going to add maybe like a little bit, I'm going to add another little like pop of green over in this area. So I just like tuck in that little bottom stem to add in some green. So some green there, some green there. And then lastly, maybe some green over here. And like it makes the world of a difference. The board looks great without it, but if you can add on a little bit of rosemary or sage or basil, whatever you have on hand, especially with the summer months coming up, just gives it a nice look at the very end. And then I'd put spoons in my jam and honey, and it is all set to go. And that's how we make the charcuterie board.